Light Drifter is an indie adventure role-playing game released in 2016. The game was developed by Heart Machine in Game Maker Studio. The studio's name, as well as the game itself, were both inspired by Alex Preston, the lead designer who grew up with congenital heart disease. He wanted to tell the story of his battles with his illness in the form of a video game, and with the help of a few other developers, he created Hyper Light Drifter. This game is a melancholic masterpiece, an impactful tale of survival and redemption, and a testament to how effective atmospheric storytelling can still be in the modern gaming landscape. The mechanics of Hyper Light Drifter start off very simple. The player is given 4 fundamental mechanisms to maneuver the world: a sword, a pistol, a heal, and a dash. While being very effective in combat with the enemies scattered across the land, they also are required for the player to traverse the environment, and even to solve some puzzles. Throughout the world, there are also crates with gold fragments. A player that collects 4 fragments will assemble a gold coin. These coins can be traded with vendors to unlock additional skills and gear. Any acquisitions augment the fundamental mechanics to benefit the player, giving them more sustainability in their quest. There are upgrades for guns that increase their ammo capacity, and upgrades that allow the player to hold more heals. There are also upgrades that add new mechanics, like the power slash, the dash strike, the dash chain, and the grenade. On a standard playthrough, a player likely won't come across enough gold coins to buy every upgrade possible, so often they must choose what best adheres to their preference. For example, do you choose an extra heal slot for when you get hit, or do you choose the ability to deflect projectiles so you don't get hit? It's all up to the player, and as a result, these choices create a personalized playstyle characteristic of the RPG genre. The dynamics of Hyper Light Drifter are pretty similar to other adventure games. For starters, there's a hub world that the player can recall to buy gear or to heal. There are areas in the game that are sealed off until the player completes other areas. There are areas where the player must kill every enemy to continue. There are even annoying enemies with frustrating attack patterns. This all should sound very familiar. One of the dynamics that this game does incredibly well, though, is exploration. Players are encouraged to explore every area and are rewarded for uncovering secret rooms. There are collectibles scattered throughout the world that players can pursue for immediate benefits, like guns, gold coins, and health packs. However, there are also secrets like modules, skins, keys, and monoliths that unlock new areas for the player to explore, and when completed, they offer some pretty crazy rewards. Just be patient enough to hug every wall to find a secret door, and carry extra health packs for the leaps of faith you'll make to find invisible platforms. Now, onto the combat in Hyper Light Drifter. As I've discussed earlier, there are a ton of mechanics and tools at the player's disposal. Every combat scenario can play out 100 different ways, even though all the enemies will spawn in the same place and have the same attack patterns. The most fun encounters are where the game locks the player in an area and throws a ton of enemies at them to slay. Those fights are the most chaotic and memorable. They give the player the opportunity to showcase their skills as they strategically slash and shoot in between dodging enemy projectiles. One of the most satisfying feelings in the game has to be when the player decapitates an enemy after risking getting hit to charge up a power slash. Overall, the combat feels clean, and the difficulty of the enemies make them satisfying to overcome. Lastly, let's talk about the locations in the game and the overall objectives. The hub world is in the center of everything. It's the safe haven for the survivors of the ongoing apocalypse. In the middle of the hub is a giant lock embedded into the ground. The lock can only be opened when 4 pylons have been activated. The pylon to the west is buried within a cursed forest, corrupted by an infectious crystal and crawling with mad soldiers. The pylon to the north lies on top of a mountain, once a grand monastery of avian acolytes, turned into a cult of black magic and heresy. The pylon to the east rests in the flooded ruins of an ancient civilization, now desecrated by bloodthirsty amphibians and ferocious fungi. The pylon to the south is lodged in an industrial wasteland, a once technological acropolis forgotten by the sands of time. The player's objective is to locate and activate these pylons, to open the lock in the hub, and use whatever is inside to end the apocalypse. Hyper Light Drifter has incredible aesthetic value. It is an absolute paragon of atmospheric storytelling. There are moments in the game where the player can take a step back from all the fighting and just admire the setting. The game will actually take the focus off of the main character to showcase the environment and allow the player to take it all in. The artistic choices and the level design make the world feel vast, reminding the player that they are a small part of a larger story. A memorable moment that sticks out to me was when I was walking along my path, and I saw a Titan's corpse resting along a mountain in the distance. I saw it, didn't really think too much about it, but acknowledged it, and continued on my way. 30 minutes later, I was looking for an elevator when I encountered the same Titan, and I was just in awe of how enormous it was up close. If it was alive, it could have easily crushed my character between 2 fingers. It gave me a new perspective, something to think about as I followed the path in silence. The visuals were only amplified by the impressive soundtrack. The composer, Disasterpiece, the same composer behind the Fez soundtrack, really pulled through here. Each region has its own vibe, its own aesthetic, and the music serves to solidify their legitimacy. It haunts the player as they traverse the world alone, increasing tension as they walk their path, and then it booms when they break into combat. The intensity would crescendo when fighting the bosses, creating these memorable sequences. But after the battle was won, there was no triumphant fanfare to be had, only desolate reverberations. One of the creative decisions that I really admire about this game is that it leaves out any sort of text or dialogue. Besides the opening cutscene, the player really doesn't get much exposition, since all the text in the game consists solely of foreign glyphs. Most of the storytelling is told through imagery. It solves an issue that I think has been plaguing the industry lately. Instead of spewing out non-stop explanations for everything, Heart Machine allows us to think for ourselves and piece together our own interpretation of the bigger story. When players are allowed to think critically about what's happening in the game, they become more invested and more immersed, and will see the story through to the end. And Hyper Light Drifter is definitely a game that you will want to see through to the end. Based on its mechanics, dynamics, and aesthetics, it's a rewarding challenge and a fantastic story. I find myself returning to this game pretty often, even though I've beaten it like 4 times. I'd say I enjoyed it so much because I could tell that Heart Machine had figuratively, and maybe literally, put their heart and soul into it. That kind of dedication and drive in video games is pretty rare nowadays, and it deserves appreciation. To close off this video, I would like to ask you, the viewer, that for this new year, take this message from me as I have taken from this game. You either kill your demons, or they will kill you.